welcome back to my author commentary for A Prince of Song and Shade. Today we're up to chapter 33, which is quite a short one, and 34 isn't a hugely long one either, so I'll combine those and chat through both of them together today. Firstly, we kick off with chapter 33, which is a relatively brief check-in with Talyn now that she's arrived not only back in Mithanis, but she's up at the Skyreach with the royal family staying in the Citadel. And then we shift on to a chapter about Cuinn. Quick engagement with his family, and then he and Talyn both visiting with Anne and Windsong. Our first physical face-to-face introduction with Windsong, which was a lot of fun. But firstly, chapter 33, I think the thing that resonates most with me from this chapter, even though it's really nothing happens, but Talyn wakes up her first morning up in the Skyreach, and she's had another nightmare about Sari, and some of that grief is really weighing her down. And she and Sari chat briefly about it, and she says to Sari that even now, if someone gave me the choice, I would choose to go back to that life I had. So even though she's found some new happiness and her world's kind of opened up since she's travelled to Mithanis and become one of the wolves, joined the wolves, built the wolves. Even in this moment now, she just loved that life so much. She loved that partnership. She loved that work. She loved her place in the world so much that she would still go back to that if she had the choice. And of course, this does change by the time we get to the end of this series. Talyn has settled herself in what her new life looks like. And when she's asked that same question again by Sari, her answer is quite different. We can talk about that though once we get to the read along or the chapter author summary for A Duet of Sword and Song. But it's just that brief touching with where Talyn is at. She's definitely healing. She's getting better. She's finding her feet. And he even says to Sari in this chapter, I'm feeling down now. I'm feeling bad now, but it's just one moment at a time, and I'll take another step forward and keep moving forward. She heads off to breakfast with the wolves. We get a few little references to how Cuinn's attitude towards the wolves has changed. The notable difference being when nobody sees, so when there's no one else around, he's quite engaged with Theak. He's quite happy to provide information. It's only when others are around to see that he's not quite as helpful or as engaged with the wolves, which is a little piece of information that kind of registers with her in this chapter, in this conversation, and is one of the pieces that comes into play later on in this book at the end when she's starting to really put together exactly who Cuinn is and the fact that he's a Shadowhawk. It's the little pieces like this along the way that are kind of sinking into the back of her mind, and Talyn's almost uncanny ability to put little pieces together into getting to the right answer really comes into play later on. So we just this chapter's kind of seeding those in. And another kind of under quiet reference, I suppose, or slipped in under the radar reference to Mithanis is he's a horrible person. He comes across as a pretty poor ruler, and in many ways he is. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a strategic brain and that he doesn't know how to rule well if perhaps he was a better person or wasn't so ignorant or wasn't so narrow-minded. His approach to the wolves' travel, escorting Cuinn to Montan, he doesn't want obviously Cuinn being his younger brother, he doesn't want him currying any favour or influence with the Montani. The Montani remain quite a large neighbour, quite intimidating. He trusts Azralan more than he does Cuinn, obviously, and so his kind of plan is to have the horses that the wolves will be riding show up at the very last minute, so there's no chance for them to train to learn how to ride. So when they do show up in Montan, they kind of make a fool of themselves again. It's not a very nice way to go about things. In fact, it's a horrible way to go about things, but Mithanis is no fool, and this is, again, just little subtle seeding hints there that he's not an idiot, even if perhaps his narrow-mindedness, his paranoia, his anger lead him to make poor decisions in ruling. Excuse me. Then we jump into chapter 34. We have a Cuinn beelining for breakfast, seeing his family and making a quick change in direction to go and get his breakfast as a takeaway as opposed to sit down. There's a little kind of sad note in there when his mother takes a kind of very long-suffering, kind of vaguely annoyed approach with Cuinn's attitude and the way he speaks and the way he talks to her, and how sad that makes him feel that he's always living up to his mother's low expectations of him. And there's a part of him, the son that loves his mother, that would love to have her be proud of him. But it's simply not possible because if Cuinn was himself around his family, then she'd be even more disappointed in him than he is now. And she certainly wouldn't accept him as he truly is, which is, pretty sad for him, and kind of feel really sorry for Cuinn in that scene. He also then struggles quite a lot with the fact that he knows Talyn's having a hard time. He can pick that up through his song magic, and he obviously quite knows her better than he used to now as well, but he can't do anything about that. The best thing he can do is just try and rile her up and try and get her annoyed and angry with him so that she's distracted from how bad she's feeling, but all he really wants to do is give her a hug and ask her what he can do to make things better. Then the two of them have their first face-to-face meeting with Anrun Wingsong, and he's quite a different kettle of fish than Idrian Iceflight. I think he's referenced in this chapter by one or the other, Cuinn or Talyn, as being a very different man. Well, actually, no, I think it's Anrun himself who says, I'm a very different man from Idrian Iceflight. That's apparent both from his general demeanour, the way he speaks, but also the way he treats both of them. Cuinn gets treated with the respect accorded to him as the prince of the Okondor family, which is a rare event, which is certainly not how Iceflight treated him. Iceflight being Mithanis' pawn. But also in the way he treats Talyn, he straight up admits, acknowledges out loud that she's incredibly competent, that she's possibly the most competent one of his soldiers under his command, and he's willing to give her that respect as her due, which astonishes both of them and is quite fun from a writing perspective. I know I talk about Anrun Wingsong quite a lot, and I have done in these author commentaries. That's because Anrun is one of my secret author favorite characters. He was written as a side character when he first came into the story. When I was first writing him in the story, he was just the new dude to replace Idrian Iceflight. And I wanted him to be quite a stark difference from how Iceflight was, to just change things up a bit to startle both Cuinn and Talyn, but also just change the dynamic of the story a little bit. And for the first time, give them an actual ally amongst the winged folk, as opposed to having every single winged folk be so horrible to them. But I just liked him so much. His role expanded into what it becomes in the latter two books. And of course, he's Cuinn's father. Right at the end of this chapter, Cuinn learns about the latest killing in the Citadel. Taratha Flightbreeze at the head of the Healing Guild. Again, this is another move by Azralan as part of his kind of broader long-term goal of seeding instability in the Citadel. If his mother can't maintain safety and security for her winged nobles, that creates uncertainty in her rule, and it's something he's looking to take advantage of in terms of his longer-term play to become both King of Mithrina and Ahara of Montan. Still in its relatively early stages, but another little kind of step forward in that plan. And it's why both Serana and Mithanis are so unsettled and so unhappy at breakfast, which Cuinn picks up on but doesn't give a toss about, because why would he? But again, they might be ignorant rulers, they might be pretty bad at their jobs, they might not care about all their people, and only some of them, but they're not idiots and they know something's going wrong, and that's obviously worrying them. So yes, a couple of interesting chapters there. As always, I'm more than happy to answer questions or comment further on anything that I've talked about today or any of the previous author commentaries. Just drop your questions and comments in the box below, and I'd love to chat about it. Otherwise, I really look forward to seeing you in chapter 35, and I hope you have a fantastic day.